5 categories of elder abuse, just to lead into this. Physical, sexual, psychological, hard to measure psychological, of course, okay? Neglect, whether it be personal neglect or neglect on the part of a third party, and then financial. There's a study out of the US from the Texas Adult Protection Services, and if you don't know, Canada has no adult protection services. Once you turn 18, you're on your own, okay? We have a form of it, if you would, known as the Office of Public Guardian Trustee, but the benchmark is extremely high. Every province is regulated differently. Every province approach to it is different, as with the territories. But that study found in 2015, they discovered something unexpected, but it makes sense, is that those over the age of 65, older adults, I use rather than the word elder, and the victimization of that for financial and for physical and death within 5 years. And I can tell you from the work I've done, I've lost half my victims in 3 years or less.
You mean just from stress?
Yeah. And the knowledge, the awareness that you've lost your money. Yeah, now think about this, if you lost your savings or your home, which is a lot of people's major savings, is their retirement plan. That's my retirement plan, right? That asset is now being taken over by someone and it's no longer yours, or there's a huge mortgage on it. So when you do sell it, there's nothing left for you anyways. That type of effect. And that ultimately becomes a form of psychological abuse, of course, which can't be measured. And that's where you get the, you can read about one particular person I had who got caught up in this as a victim, Ethel, and within 5 months, she went from being cognitively able to communicate to unable to communicate. And in the institution there, Whippy Shores is called, it's a psychiatric hospital, in 5 months. So yeah, it has a huge impact. The problem is that a lot of people do not realize of the impact. They don't have an appreciation for it. And the biggest concern in Canada, which we do not study this very well at all, a lot of the studies and stuff I look at is from the US and overseas. What do you think the percentage of your chances are that if you are victimized in a situation like a power attorney type situation or another form of elder abuse, that is going to be a loved one? Any ideas?
Very high.
Yeah. In Canada, it's 86% to 89%. The US is 87%. We're slightly under the bar, yeah. Yeah. It basically is saying that if you're going to be the victim, it'll be a family member that will victimize you, which is very disheartening in many ways when you think about it. And what concerns me even more than it ever did before was COVID. And why I say that is two things. Because COVID forced a lot of isolation. So there was a heavier reliance on someone else to take care of your property for you. You trust them. You have faith that they're going to do everything in your best interest. And if you're in the habit of giving the debit card and credit card to someone else, stop it. You're breaking the law, by the way, the Criminal Code of Canada. It's not your card. Do not give it to another person, including your spouse, by the way. Okay? That's one of your biggest areas that you open yourself up to being defrauded. And a lot of times the attorney, which is the proper term we'll get into, under power of attorney, will take control of that card. They can't have it. They're not allowed to have it. Criminal code and civil, they're not allowed to have it. That was issued to you. But what ends up happening is that lately, as you see the economic change, and I don't have to tell you grocery shopping and sticker shock. They say 10%. I'm going to suggest closer to 15, 20% increase in at least the last year, okay? So now that economic burden is upon you, but it's also among your family members. And if you've made it too simple for them to access your funding, sometimes the dangling of the carrot is just too much. And the temptation, because of the pressures of the economic pressures upon them. Society has come from years ago where we believed that if you were going to spend $1, you had to have $1.15 in the bank at least. Yeah, maybe $2 in the bank. But you always had more than you were going to spend. Credit was a terrible thing. Mortgages were a necessity, but nobody really liked it at all. And you worked really hard to get rid of that mortgage as quickly as you could. But other than that, it was cash, cash, cash. That's not the way operation today. The average Canadian right now carries a debt of $1.87 for every dollar that they earn. Take inflation, take interest rates going up, and you folks are in a better financial position. And you may be seen as the opportunity to protect them from financial demise. Well, I don't know about you, but it's your money. I hope you think it's your money. And I hope you believe that you will do whatever you wish to do with your money. And if that means you decide that you take a cruise around the world, go for it, because you can do it now, okay? Enjoy it. You worked hard to get it. The problem is, the way the system currently is that you must protect yourself. I'd love to protect every one of you. I can. So you need to know this stuff. What we're going to talk about. I'm going to break it down to you between the two sessions, but understand the importance of the documents. You need to understand how they're used intentionally and how they're misused, maybe unintentionally and or intentionally. Because if you don't, you could be the next victim. And you could very well be your own child. Boy, is he the Grim Reaper, eh? And Halloween isn't even here yet. Wow. So, it's all about respecting you. It's respecting your wishes. Your wishes when you're here for power of attorney, and your wishes when you pack your bags and move on. That's my polite way of dealing with the word death, okay? So when you packed your bags and moved on, you still have wishes. And they still should be respectful of your wishes. But if you don't bring clarity into your documentation, you unfortunately could open yourself up. So often we will produce these documents. You hit print off the internet. I do not recommend those documents on the internet, by the way. You go to a lawyer's office, they fill out a standard form, and you don't really understand what you're signing and the implications of it. So we will look at that. We're going to break the form down next time, not today. Okay, but remember, this is about you. And if you're not sure, when you're in the bathroom, look at the mirror and say hello to yourself, because this is all about you. It's not about your kids. Okay, it's not about your spouse who's been with you for 50 years. That's awesome. Congratulations if that's the case, which is very, very important. But this is about you. This is a one time when you say me, and it really means something, okay? Or should mean something. Which means you need to actually sit back, understand the situation, think about some not so nice things, death, or as I say, pack your bags and move on, okay? And you have to consider those things today, because tomorrow might be a little too late. We have absolutely no idea what's going to happen the moment you walk out that door. Your life could change drastically from a car accident, from a trip and fall, or God forbid. So you need to do the work. We're going to cover a bunch of things. By the way, I will make these PowerPoints available. I don't know, I think they're going to post them. But, and then next time we're going to talk about a whole bunch of things. This is your time. If I say something you don't understand, if I've confused you in any way, please be kind enough to let me know. And don't, if you want to challenge me, please do. I don't have all the answers. As I say, I'm no expert, okay? A lot of people ask me for advice. I don't give advice. I will give you suggestions, maybe, but I can't give you advice, and nor will I give you advice, okay? And the biggest thing you understand is when I'm speaking, I'm not speaking on behalf of Durham Regional Police, because most of my bosses either ask me for advice or they don't know this stuff anyways, so they don't understand it. So if I happen to scare you, well, guess what? That's a good thing, because that was my plan. I want to scare you, but scare you smartly, if that makes sense. So when you walk away from here today, you will go home and you pull out your documents and you're going to check them. And you're going to see some of the things I told you about, probably. It'd be nice if you were looking at those documents and didn't see those things, but most likely you will see some of those things. And hopefully you have a better appreciation of what they actually mean. They're more than just words, folks. They're about you and your wishes. If you really have a problem sleeping, I invite you to read all these acts. Yes, I've read them all. There's one right here, which is interesting. It's only a couple pages long. It's when you're legally deceased. And of course, that's very important when it comes to the use of your estate and wills and everything else. The Healthcare Consent Act, we'll talk about. We won't go into the Mental Health Act, but you're welcome to read any of those. This is your biggest one when it comes to the power of attorney documents that most of you will probably already have. Now, with that said, can I see a show of hands who has a power of attorney for personal care? Okay. Who's got one continuing power of attorney for property? Cool. And they're called that? On the top of your document, is it actually called that? You don't know. I get 50-50 here, okay? You're going to want to check that. Because I can tell you from a personal, I used the lawyer my parents used for years. And when I started learning this stuff, I looked at it and it said general continuing. There's no such thing in Ontario. There's, as you will learn in a minute, there's a general and there's a continuing, but there's not a general continuing. It's not a legal document anymore because it's titled wrong. And that came from a lawyer. So, and that's not a shot at the lawyers. Unfortunately, they don't get a lot of training in this stuff unless they do the extra training. So, Substitute Decisions Act, who has a will? Awesome, awesome. We're going to talk about what happens if you don't. If you want to understand it a little bit more, read this stuff. So a power of attorney document gives the authority from you, which you will be called the grantor, which we're talking about in a second, depending, but generally the grantor. You give the authority through the document for someone else to act and speak on your behalf at a time when you're not able to. That's in essence what a power of attorney document is. It's a legal opportunity for someone else to speak. The last will and testament. Sorry, let me back up. Power of attorney document, I believe, is going to be your best present to yourself. Anybody ever buy themselves a present? I do it every birthday. I do. I don't know why. It just seems like I need a new couch. It's always in August that I end up. Change my truck, August. And it's not planned. It's just so I'll say, okay, I just gave myself a birthday present. That wasn't the plan at the beginning, but I just take credit for it, the plan. But this is the best gift that you can give yourself, because this is to protect you at a time when you can't necessarily be able to protect yourself. The last will and testament is probably the best gift you're going to give your loved ones. Now, remember what I said is, it's your money, not theirs. Yeah. I'm not saying give your money to them. I'm saying is you give them clear direction on what your wishes are, so they're not guessing on what your intent was. And then hopefully they follow those wishes and achieve whatever it is you were trying to do. It's not about money, it's about your wishes. Big difference, okay? Blow every cent you got, folks. I always remember the day my parents were standing in front of me as they were getting older, and they were talking about, they had been out for a drive, and they made it back, got late, they were tired, took a couple of days to recover, and I said, so why didn't you go in the hotel? And he said, well, because it costs money. And I looked at him, I says, if you die with money in the bank, I'm going to kill you. And I got the weirdest look. But I meant it. Like, they denied themselves the pleasure of going into a hotel. They could have afforded it because they were worried about spending that little extra money. And then, of course, they put the pressure on themselves by staying up later, et cetera, driving probably when they should have, tired, all those other complicated. But the thing that they were thinking was, so got to keep money in the bank, got to get, no, you don't. Like I said, the point being on the second one is the last will and testament, best gift to your family provides clarity of your wishes, not your money. All right. Because I believe that the best present to yourself will always be the power of attorney document, it is also going to be the most important document that you will sign. More important than a mortgage document, than a real estate document, a business document, your fancy new car, anything else that we sign in life. Because this is 100% about you. However, if you're not careful, what you just signed is a blank check. Now, if you're in the habit of signing blank checks and you happen to have one, it's M-A-R-T-I-N. What? Look, she was going to pull out her check until you started to laugh. Oh, I had a chance there. Yeah, briefly. And John Doe doesn't work over here, by the way. It's got to be your real name. But I'll take it off you. Yeah. But that's what it becomes if you allow it to be that. And I will explain that why later. And that's why it becomes the most dangerous document. It's the most important document you will ever sign, but yet it's also the most dangerous. The will is the second most important. Most people think it's about their family, the loved ones from this height to whatever height, right? That's what it usually is. Anybody ever experienced the implosion of a family over a will? I'll tell you, unfortunately, I see it way too much. It's amazing how when you put a dollar bill, $5 bill, I guess, we don't have dollar bills for a long time, but do you put money in the middle of family, how it just seems to disintegrate. And I have literally seen families who were tight, extremely close, just implode. And there's no recovery from that. There really isn't. Because whoever's caused the implosion isn't prepared to mend it. Because they're probably the one running away with the money. Right? Most unfortunate. But again, as much as I hate to say it, folks, as a potential victim, you're the one that has to protect yourself. It's incumbent upon you. Because if you're calling me, it's too late. You've been victimized already. Now, you put your safety belt on, you don't pick up your phone when you're driving, and things can still happen, right? There's no guarantees in life. But you need to protect yourself to some degree. This is what the whole world is based off, faith and trust. Now, the acts that affect all this stuff were written in the 80s. Morality a little different today than the 80s?
So much.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. So much.
Yeah. Yeah, it has, unfortunately. And that's another reason why you have to be careful. The definition of family entity, I would suggest, has changed. Moral standing, in some cases, unfortunately, has changed. There was a time when the older adult remained part of the family entity. Institutional entrance institution was a last resort, so they stayed with you. Grandma lived, and was the automatic babysitter, which was great for the household. When you need a babysitter, there was a live-in, but they were part of the family entity. Now there's grandma's in wherever doing her thing, families off doing their thing, and when they can get together at Thanksgiving, in between text messages, they get, they have a conversation and away they go. That's the reality of today. So let's look at some basic things that are required for both power of attorney and last will and testaments. This applies to both of the documents, okay? We're talking general terms, and then I'm going to break it all down a little more later. You don't need a lawyer. you can author your own documents. Okay? Be cautious of the ones on the internet, though, because the quality of them are not good. Okay? Again, if you don't understand what the verbiage means, you sign it blindly, you can set yourself up for problems. You do not require a lawyer. That's the key thing. However, if you own more than 2 properties, if you own more than 1 property, if you wish to leave to, let's say, grandchildren under the age of 18, or if you have a complicated estate, maybe you have a business as well as personal, you may own land outside the province of Ontario, then I suggest strongly that you go to a lawyer. The rules related to power of attorney and last will and testaments are different in every province and territory. What comes with those rules is taxes. The tax base is different in every province. So if you own property, let's say in Halifax, you reside here, but that's your summer retreat or something, you can actually end up having 2 wills. You write a provincial one for the property in Halifax, and you do the Ontario one for the properties and everything that you have in the province of Ontario. It is possible. You need to get legal assistance to make that happen. Okay? But if you own 1 residence, and you're leaving everything basically to 1 or 2 persons, not complicated on the surface, you could do them right here, right now. And I'll explain to you what else you have to do to make it legal. Any questions on that part? All right. So, the forms can be in any form. What must happen, though, is you must have the proper titles. It has to be either typewritten or handwritten. Interesting enough, you print them off the internet, it's typed written, and then they expect you to fill in the blanks. But the rules say it either handwritten or typed. Can't be both. Now, why do you think that is?
Changes you can make.
Right. How do you spot a change if it's handwritten on typing? And when was that change made? We don't know, right? So I'm going to talk to you about that in a second, but that's where the problem comes in. If you have a will that is completely handwritten, I just lost it. Holographic is what it's called, if anybody's ever heard that terminology. That's a will that's handwritten. Okay? You can do that. No problem at all. You can handwrite your will. Okay? Bequest whatever you wish. You must have the titles in there somewhere in your documents. It is either going to be a general power of attorney, which I'll explain each one of these to you in a bit. It's going to be a power of attorney for personal care. You're okay there? I'm not blocking you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. A continuing power of attorney for property, and the last will and testament. Key thing is the provincial. They have to be the province of Ontario documents. Somewhere in there, they must have these titles on your document. Okay? If you ever come across one like enduring power of attorney, that came from BC. It's fine for a resident of BC, but you're a resident of Ontario, it's not valid here. It may be used as a guide, but not as a standalone document. So it doesn't have the same weight. Okay? Out in Nova Scotia, they call it completely different. Northwest Territories, again, totally different name to it. We use those 4 titles. Now we asked you, the room here, over 50% had power of attorney for personal care and a continued power of attorney. But does anybody have a general power of attorney document? Have you ever heard of one? But each and every one of you could have one right now. There's nothing cognitively wrong with you, but the circumstances in your life may be that you need someone else to represent you, to deal with something related to your property. That's what a general is all about. So let me explain that to you in just a sec. But to author any of these documents, you must be over 18. I think we're all good there, okay? You must be a resident of Ontario. Everybody, your mailing address is RR1 any street in Ontario somewhere, right? When you're filling out your documents, by the way, don't put your actual street address in. I see that way too often. It's not necessary. What's necessary is you put Wasaga Beach, Ontario. That shows jurisdiction. You don't have to put 123 any street, Wasaga Beach. Because if you move, it doesn't negate the document, but what's the relevance to it? The key thing is you're a resident of Ontario at the time you filled out the documents. Pesky thing, isn't it? Yeah. And this one we'll get to later, but it's very interesting. What that line actually says, and I've left a document over there for you, it's red and blue. And one side it says grantor, that's you. The other side says attorney, and I'll explain that to you in a minute. There's the last line in there in the Substitute Decisions Act. Says that when you do a power of attorney for personal care and a continuing power of attorney for property, you must realize by signing this document that whomever you appoint may rip you off. It's right in the rules. You have to understand by signing this document, whoever you appoint could very well steal from you. Now, it uses a little fancier terms, but that's what it means. Ever bought a car and signed a line saying that the car dealer may be charging too much for the car, but you're okay with it? Or, you know, gone in the grocery store and like, it almost sounds ludicrous, but I understand why it is. It's because you're supposed to be aware of what's going on. And again, it forces you to take steps to protect you, because the document, unfortunately, the way it is written, isn't going to protect you unless you personalize it. And as we go, I'll give you some ideas and things, suggestions on how to personalize it. But I always found that interesting. Yep. I'm going to have trust and faith in someone that they may rip me off. And your odds of it being a family member are 86%. Yes, ma'am.
Just so I understand, what you're saying is I'm willingly signing and assigning this to this person knowingly that they might rip me off? Is that what the document says?
Mm-hmm. Let me grab you the official verbiage. The official verbiage is under G, and this is right out of the legislation. Realize there is the possibility your attorney, and I'll explain to you what the attorney is, the legal title. It's not a power of attorney, it's the attorney, could misuse the authority you have given them.
So then
Interesting.
I don't know what's the point is then?
Well, the point is that you need to take steps to protect yourself. Do not sign those documents that you hit print out off the internet. Be careful of the ones that are presented to you for you by the lawyer. Personalize it, and we'll go through some ways to personalize it. What you need to do is put some controls on it, okay? What happens with these documents so often is you just blindly sign them and you have faith and trust. And now I'm not saying that any one of your family members is going to victimize you. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that if you are victimized, the odds are it's going to probably be a family member that does it. And if you're not sure, here's an analogy for you, the moms. If you go back to your days when you had the kids around, and you just baked the fresh batch of cookies, and you had to leave the room, you told them not to touch. Sometimes you came home back and maybe one taste test took place. Other times everything was cool, right? You never know. You know, the smart kids give peanut butter to the dog, and then when they walk back in the room, the dog's licking the lips, and they blame the dog, right? Right, yeah. The point being is if you dangle the carrot, there's a chance, especially with what I said at the beginning about the economic times changing and everything, there's a very good chance that you possibly could. And this is about you, not them, which a lot of people forget, okay? I so often hear with wills, I'm leaving money for my kids. Yeah, but you're having problems going to the grocery store. Yeah, but I gotta leave things. No, you don't. You've already done your bit for the kids. Right? If you happen to leave something for them, nice. I'm sure they'd be appreciative. But there's nowhere written in a contract, being a parent, that you must leave your kids something. Leave them a family photo, right? So this is one that really catches a lot of people. Your documents must be witnessed. Now, the witnessing of these documents has nothing to do with the content. So the witnesses do not have to read the document. They have to know what they're witnessing, continued power of attorney, general POA, last will and testament. What they're witnessing is that you have taken your pen, you're physically in front of them, and you're putting your scroll, your signature, to the document in front of them under your own fruition. That you're not being forced, nobody's coercing you into doing, nobody's threatening you to do so. That's what they're witnessing. They're not witnessing the content, which a lot of people don't realize is extremely important, because if that comes up at a later date, we don't have the witness that can come back and attest to the content, because they don't have to know the content. They just have to know that that's their signature, and on that date that they signed it, because the date will be shown, and that you were there of your own fruition, and that you had the pen in hand, and that you signed those documents before them. And if anybody's done their documents before a lawyer, generally the lawyer that produced your documents will not be the one that witnesses. They'll go get somebody else in the office, completely blind. So they'll come in and say, hi, this is Mrs. Jones. We have her will before her. So now they know what the document is. It's a will. And they watch you, whomever, sign that document. Now they're witnessing the fact that you're doing it of your own fruition. They know it's a will because they've been told, but they don't know that in that will, X, Y, Z are your wishes, and it's irrelevant to them. Okay, it's irrelevant. The way this is set up, they too must be over the age of 18. They can be from anywhere, by the way. They don't have the provincial. They don't have to live in the province of Ontario. Okay. But it'd be good, by the way, if there's a language barrier, not to be a witness, because they have to understand what your documents are, title are, okay? They're not supposed to be related. So what I tell people, the best way to save yourself from getting into trouble is don't pick someone in your bloodline, okay? Don't pick someone in your bloodline, because that can be a contested issue at a later date. So don't pick your kids witnessing you signing a document, because there's an interest there. And that could be considered a conflict of interest at a later date. Okay, so that's why you, again, see in a lawyer's office, it won't be generally speaking, it is not. I've seen it a couple times, but generally speaking, most lawyers will go down the hall, grab someone else, the receptionist, another lawyer, get them come in the office for a moment, and the signature's done, okay? They cannot be under guardianship, which means they are a capable mind. Someone else is not legally responsible for them, okay? And guardianship is for people over the age of 18, by the way. And that cannot be named in your document. So in case of a power of attorney document, if you appoint someone to be your attorney, they can't be your witness. In case of a last will and testament, if you appoint someone to be your executor or executor X, they still make the distinction between male and female. They can't be a witness to your document. Why? Potential conflict of interest. Okay? So it's always better to grab your next door neighbor, your friends, your colleagues, the people you just met today, nice and friendly to, that kind of thing. And excuse me, but keep in mind, they're attesting to the fact that they're watching you sign these documents before them. So you must sign first before they do. Okay? We're going to look specifically at power of attorney documents, and then we're going to look at last will and testament in general terms. And like I said, the next time we get together, I'm going to break down power of attorney document, because that's the biggest one that gets most people into trouble. And along the way, I'll also tell you a few things when it relates to wills. So we actually have some definitions that you need to know. And I'll get into why ultimately, but if you understand, or at least have heard the words, as you will today, if they come up at a later date, you're gonna, rather than like deer in the headlight, you at least will remember that you've heard them somewhere, okay? So again, the power of attorney document is a legal document. Of course, it must have the proper title, dated, signed by you, witnessed by 2 others in the province of Ontario. And it's where you grant someone else the authority to speak on it on your behalf at a time when you can't. Okay? Whatever that reason is that you can't. In Ontario, we actually have 3. And as I said, the first one being general. We'll get into in a bit. When we're talking of the general power attorney, the word is donor. I don't like, I didn't make these titles up, folks. These are old English titles, the best research I found. And don't mistake it, you're not donating anything here, but that is the title. You're the donor. Okay, there's no blood test here, but you're donor. You're the donor according to a general power of attorney. If you're looking at a power of attorney for personal care or continuing power of attorney for property, which are the 2 that most people know of, you're the grantor. So what it means is you are granting authority to someone else to speak on your behalf. You're the grantor. The donee, again, it's got nothing to do with donations, but the general uses the term donee. That's the person you appoint. The person you, or persons, hopefully more than one, that you have faith and trust in will do things on your behalf, specifically for your benefit. Love that term, eh? Donee. Yeah. This is the one that people misuse all the time because it's got nothing to do with the bar. It's got nothing to do with being a solicitor, barrister, or a lawyer. Okay? You don't have to go to university for 10 years. This is who you have appointed is the attorney. Now, I constantly hear it all the time. I'm the power attorney for mom. I'm the power attorney for dad. And I go, no, you're not. They go, yes, I am. And I go, no, you're not. Because it's impossible. Power attorney is a document. The title is attorney. What's the big difference in those 2? Besides the fact legally, I take the word power out of there. This is not power over you. No one human being should ever have power over another. This is about you. Use the right terminology. Special organizations when you're talking. Okay? I learned this when I was studying with the lawyers, where the profs, the lawyers, were telling the lawyers to stop using that phrase, POA. They were doing it for reasons of legal, because it's impossible. It's a document. I've since learned 2 reasons. Legally, it's impossible. More importantly, it takes that word power out of there. And if you're not certain about that, if you have a friend or someone who's in that position who is helping another person out, watch the mannerisms when they say, I'm the power attorney. Short of doing a chest bump, you would normally find that it kind of elevates. What they don't realize is, in fact, they're an attorney. And by the way, you have a whole lot of responsibility and accountability, both to the criminal code and under civil legislation, to which you can be held accountable for. It's called fiduciary responsibility. That's an old English term. I don't like the donee part, but hey, that is the term, okay? But the big one, if you folks are ever in a position of that, remember attorney, okay? Because that's the title, comes along with the responsibility. There are 3 types in Ontario. Few of us ever know. I learned the first one only because just days before I went on my first mission, a lawyer friend of mine said, so you got a power of attorney in case something happens? And I went, huh? So she quickly gave me lesson 101 on general power of attorney. I signed one, and thank goodness I did. So the general power of attorney document is really, really helpful. Its usage today is less than what it was 10 years ago because of the ability to do a lot of banking and a lot of other things online, but it still has value and has a strong value. You could have one right now in place. And I'll give you a couple examples in a minute. But this is a totally different act than what people are familiar with. They think of the Substitute Decisions Act. This is different. What's nice about this particular document, folks, is it strictly for financial purposes, so management of property, finance being one component of that. It's valid for a very specific time frame, for a very specific task, which you define in the document. Example, when I went overseas, my sister, who has been in accounting all her life, I had a lot of faith in her. Yeah, she's my sister, but I had a lot of faith in her. So I appointed her as my donee. And what I said was, when I step off the soil of Canada, it comes into play, and when I return onto the soil of Canada, it no longer is in play. And I allowed her to deal with the management of my property. When I got home, first thing she did, we weren't very far to the parking lot at the airport. She turned in the front seat from my brother-in-law's truck. She took this stack of paper and she said, now it's your problem. The nice thing is they drove me to my house. Because the general power attorney, I gave her authority to deal with my property management. I didn't give her authority to sell my house. I didn't give her authority to do other things other than to manage my property. Manage, not sell. Okay? So the floodgates aren't open. When would you use something like this? Well, first and foremost, very important to understand, all power attorney documents are no longer valid when you pack your bags and move on. At that moment, they cease. Contrary to what I've seen, where people have used them weeks later, they get into trouble. Okay? Under this document, you cannot create a will for someone else. You cannot create the other types of power attorney. You have no legal authority to do so. Okay? You can only do what is on the document for the period of time to which is on the document. So it becomes invalid if date is expired. It's upon issuance of a new one. You revoke, which you can do. And you can do that with any power attorney, as with your will. You just sign a document revoking it. Your donee resigns. I'm out of here. I can't take this anymore, whatever. I'm moving. I've got too many other responsibilities. If you become mentally incapable, at the point where you're deemed incapable, it is no longer valid. So it's kind of a control mechanism in play. And upon death. Most usage is corporations. So, you know, the president of Bell doesn't go around buying real estate. He appoints somebody because of that position that they're in. They appoint an employee to go speak on behalf and make contractual arrangements. They do it under general power attorney. If you own a business, you could appoint someone to do work on representing you from a business perspective. Not very common. If you're traveling outside Ontario for an extended period of time, and you're in the habit of paying your bills every month in person, standing in line and saying hello to what I call as a humanoid nowadays. You know, I don't know about you guys, but I like to see a smiling face behind the teller wicket. I still go to my credit union and just say hello. And they recognize me, which is kind of cool. And today I call them humanoids because everything's supposed to be self-checkout and everything else, right? You're talking to a computer. Don't talk very long, by the way. The computer's timing you. But anyway, the point being is you're going to travel for an extended period of time and you want those bills to continue to be paid. You could appoint someone under general power attorney to access your account to pay the bills. So that person would then go to the financial institution, present the bill, power attorney document, and pay the bills. It doesn't allow them to take money out of your account. It does allow them to pay the bills. And if it's not being paid to Bell or the cable company, then it isn't happening because there's no authority permitted for that. The other big one, though, is at a time when you're in a capable mind. So as we age, sometimes we tend to end up in the hospital, for example, or throughout our life. We may be in a situation where we have to go for an operation. And let's say you're going to go today, the operation's tomorrow. So you create a general power of attorney because you know that the operations, during the period that the operation's taking place, you're probably seeing, if you've seen anything, pink elephants and purple dwarfs, right? Because of the good stuff they put you on. It might take you some time to recover from that. You realize by the nature of the operation that physically the recovery could be, let's say, another month before you can get up and go see that person, that teller, to do what you would normally do. So what you could do is point someone to cover off the period of time. A day or two before you go into the hospital, add a couple of days in the end, anticipated that you're healthy and back, able to do it yourself. And during that period of time, they can go pay your bills for you. They cannot sell the house out from under you, the dog, your car, and all the other property that you own. Yes, your dog's property. Okay? That's one of the nice things for it. And that's still one of the applicable things, today. If you happen to be in the position of a grandparent and you have grandchildren who are studying outside of Ontario and they're over the age of 18, you might want to take this back to your children, is that they're no longer they can't represent that adult. So they call up to do something with the Rogers bill, which is in the adult's name, your grandchild, and say, hi, I'm the mom. And Rogers will say, well, very nice of you. What's your authority for me to access the account? The general will do that. Otherwise, Rogers is going to hang up on you because there's no legal authority for them to access the account because your grandchild is over the age of 18. So it actually still has validity today. Of course, the top ones happen all the time, but for you and I, they're traveling a great distance. And like I said, personally, it was paid off because I just bought a new house before I went, months before. I thought I paid my taxes for the year. They came back and said, oh no, reassessment, you owe this, and you're actually in default. And I went, huh? My sister dealt with all that because I was 7 hours difference, 13,000 kilometers away. It would have been impossible for me to solve that. And everything else that you can imagine that goes on in your daily life can go wrong. It goes wrong when you're well out the country, if you've never experienced that. You will have problems with everything you can think of if you're gone for an extended stay. And this is how you make it available to you, knowing that when you get back, your home's still going to be there. And hopefully the dog was fed and the plants aren't looking like my plants. All right, any questions on the general? Very, very valuable tool available to you today to use if it's applicable to you. And you could be doing it right now. And you don't need a special reason for it. You just want someone else to speak on your behalf, representing you before whatever financial institution or organization. You could do a general. If you've done a bank power attorney document, there's a very good chance it's a general. There's a very, very good chance. It's not a continuing power of attorney. So what's the difference? Cognitive mind, capable, incapable. General, capable mind, continuing power of attorney, incapable, generally speaking. So if you sign one in the bank, general power of attorney, legally, they should not be taking any action if you are deemed incapable, although they do. They're not supposed to. So if you have signed one in the bank, you need to check the title of it as well.